Hello everyone, and welcome to a new conversation of the Altering Shifting Communing series, a project presented and hosted by Call for Curators. I am Ilaria Conti, the curator of the series. And for those who might not be familiar with the project or might be watching this for the first time, I just would like to briefly say that SHIFT COMM is an ongoing series of curatorial conversations and on practices that cultivate communal and decolonial approaches and that rethink critically and ethically the role of curating. So we get every other Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Berlin time for a conversation with practitioners from diverse contexts to discuss practices that are rooted in and research and also that foster ethical forms of relationality and of working. Today, I give our welcome to Anna and Maria from TOK, the Creative Association of Curators. Thanks to both of you very much for being here. So as usual, we will have a conversation for the next 40 minutes approximately. In the meantime, I encourage those who are watching to ask questions through the comment section on Facebook and YouTube, and also share thoughts and observations via email. I always like to share it also at the beginning. If you have questions for our speakers or any comment or idea that pops up as you're watching this, please feel free to send us an email. So Maria and Anna, again, thank you very much for being here. I would like to start by asking you to introduce yourself in your own words, but also by asking the one question that is always recurring across the entire series, and that, as I always say, is one that acknowledges our humanness, which is, how are you, where are you, and how have these past months been?
Thank you, Ilaria. Thank you so much for inviting, and I think it's great to be a part of it, and also great to reconnect with Anna again, because we're again in different parts of the world. So it's great to see both of you. My name is Maria Veits. I'm a curator and co-founder of Creative Association of Curators TOK. I'm fine. I'm in a little bit of a transition mode. I'm currently in London. And these 3 months, I think, have been very hectic, very busy, and also quite disturbing. And I've been thinking a lot about all the transformations that we're going through, also as people and as the planet and as professionals as well. And there are more questions than answers, of course, but hopefully together somehow we will figure things out. I'm very inspired by the news about the vaccine. I think it's some positive news that we're having finally, and let's hope it all will work out. Fingers crossed.
Hi everyone, my name is Anna Bitkina and I'm also co-founder of TOK. And thank you, Ilaria, for inviting us for this series of conversation. We're really happy to contribute to your content, and we hope we have some audience now. I'm at the moment in the Netherlands, in the city called Arnhem. It's 1 hour east from Amsterdam, almost on the border with Germany. And I'm fine. I've been just had a wonderful forest walk with my daughter. And so it's lots of nature around, which actually really helps to overcome the kind of this 21st century isolation, which is even more instigated by COVID-19. And yeah, we all experience, I think, different perception of time, different features of memory, and yeah, I guess our body and minds are living through some transitions, and I think this kind of longing feeling of waiting is also something which is like stretches through our mind a lot.
Thank you so much. And I am always very grateful because this conversation series started in a very complex time. And so I understand also how much energy and focus it takes to be present and to continue to engage in this type of conversation. I think that the hope is also that really through the informal ways in which we put in place these conversations and also the type of content and approaches that we feature and carve out space for, there is that intentionality continues to renew itself throughout this very, very complex moment. So let's get right into it. As said, and as we mentioned before, you both are the founders of TOK, the Creative Association of Curators, which is the first organization of its Russia. So I want to start really from the basics and ask, when did you start it and why? And also, what was the cultural and somewhat geopolitical context at the time? And which goals did you set for it? And also, why did you choose the curatorial collective, which I think very interesting, right, as a format, rather than, for instance, that of an organization. So somewhat, what were the original motivations and also the initial choices that you had to make as you decided to embark on this type of process?
Well, we just celebrated 10 years of our collective, and it's amazing that we've managed to be together for all this time. You know, we started our relationship as friends. We studied together in the first liberal arts school in Russia, in St. Petersburg. That was an educational experiment between Bard College and State University of St. Petersburg. And then we kind of parted ways, and I went more into social sciences direction, and Anya went more into art management, visual arts. And then when we started realizing that actually at our workplaces, we can't really fulfill all our professional ambitions, we started thinking of a collective project that we could co-run as an alternative initiative. And I think back then it was a much more fruitful ground for creating such an experimental collective. And there were many initiatives that were starting in the fields of media, in the fields of contemporary art, in various research that are connected to kind of research of city and urbanistics. And I think we kind of, in a way, is an example of this specific time and place when the combination of different resources and energy produced and generated such grassroots initiatives like TOK.
Yeah, and I guess the place where we were studying was very important for us because it was a very unique community back then, because it was experimental educational program, and like students of all different ages, different backgrounds, and professors from very different fields who couldn't really perform maybe their alternative courses in other academic institutions that were teaching us. So, but there was no absolutely hierarchy between students and teachers, and it was a very flat, very liberal, very open, and very disorganized institution, which brought additional vibe and really worked as a glue for people that were studying there. And I guess we also decided to work as a collective because we came from different fields, but at the same moment of time, we found ourselves in a certain professional frustration. So basically, there was a need for us to survive and move forward to fulfill our professional ambitions and to be independent, and actually, I think we were free and free enough to build up our own structure. So not to be part of a structure, but build up our own structure. And I think, still, I hope we have this this kind of drive that we had in the beginning, and we're driven very much of this friendship, collectivism, kinship, and curiosity.
Yeah.
And also like this kind
up
of
and down, though, maybe this, enthusiasm. But I think also as a tandem, we elaborated a whole bunch of strategy of how to work as a duo, because it's not always easy. And of course, as a collective, we sometimes have situations when we disagree or when we have different opinions on things. And I think this joint energy and joint approach to the core aspects of our practices help us remain a collective for this significant amount of years already.
And I think it's very important, I think, for collectives for their long life existence. I think it's very important to realize strong and weak sides of each other and sort of work as a puzzle where like one is weaker, another will fulfill that with his or her strengths. So that's, and of course, the open-mindedness of realizing it, and I think it's very important for people to work together, because otherwise it's the ego and competition is overtakes, and or people just became interested in other things. But we are, I guess, still interested in the same things, and we are driven, I guess, by idea of social justice. I think that's what helps us actually to carry on, and we found ourselves often in some frustrations and in some weak emotional positions, but we somehow, our friendship helps us to support each other, and this idea of care of each other, and yeah, that's all this very human and very uninstitutional in a way, not kind of common for standard institutions features, are really important for us, and I think we very much cherish this.
That's great, and I think we will go back also to this notion of work together somewhat when thinking about curatorship. So just to go further in depth, I want to just start talking about really the projects that you've been developing so far, also for those who are watching this, to get a better sense of how this translates into curatorial practice. So just a very broad question to get started with, which is, what kind of curatorial and research methodologies have you been developing through TOK? And also, which issues have you decided to somewhat focus on right from the beginning? Sort of how you go about it, but also what you go about.
Yeah. So our practice, I think, is to a very large extent socially charged. We work with very immediate issues and burning issues. And I think that's also maybe the consequence of our forming and formation period, and the period that we were forming into, the 90s. That was a time that, people were engaged into political thinking just because they could not. They had to somehow address political issues and understand how they will be living through this political change that is happening. And also, I think in the time when TOK was just starting, there were lots of things that were going through transformation. And for us, as for curators, there were, I think, a few strains in our practice that we started to work very closely with. The concept and changing position and maybe code of post-Soviet public space, and we'll talk more about it using examples from some projects. We also, a few years ago, started to work with media, information manipulation, fake news, and participation of technology in information and opinion manipulation. We work a lot with the institution of education and how it has been changing, and what art, both in terms of theory and practice, can contribute to contemporary learning environments. And we've worked a lot with different aspects of migration. which also includes this nomadic lifestyle as ours. So we worked not only with the themes of incoming migration to Russia, but also with migration coming out of Russia. And we talk a lot about brain drain and people who have to leave just because they're looking for safer environments where they could professionally be more fulfilled and more free. So I think these are some of the themes that we work with, and recently I think the question of environment, of ecological crisis, of interdependency has also been a big question that we have been working on with a lot, especially in our recent symposium, Interdependency as a Condition, which was conducted at the premises of the 4th Arctic Art Forum. We will also talk about it in detail further on.
Yeah, I think like the overall method is very much connected to the investigation and studying different social and political structures. And we're coming from the region we're from. We're very much interested in post-Soviet conditions and what is happening and how the structures operate within a Russian context. But of course, regional changes we've seen and we analyze within global changes. And I think such things that constructions of citizenship through education or different parts of social history, common history is very important for us. So we really looking at the structures. We are trying to unpack and sort of fulfill certain gaps, but also to trace different corruption tractions within those systems, and also to look at some consequences of those corruptions, but also try to propose some positive and potential and alternative scenarios of how it could be. And but also for us, it's very important to dive into to work in the field. We're very much like curators that not doing desk research, but rather field research. So if we work with subject of citizenship, we will go to work with young people, we will go to schools, we will go to youth clubs. If we work with the question of public space, we would definitely gonna collaborate, or on the contrary, to be in fight with local government, or to work with local activist groups. So for us, it's like really important to dive into those structures, to find like-minded people and to work with them towards social changes.
Yeah, and I think also to give voice to certain unheard communities and participants of our projects, because when we also talk about our nomadism and absence of a specific space or venue that we would run, we never intentionally wanted to have a gallery space or white cube or anything, because most of the spaces and places emerge in the process of our project. So either it's a small community that is gathered around one specific project, or we kind of create together collectively a new specific context with the participants of our project. So there's like not placemaking, maybe it's very much of a term from urban studies that I'm kind of appropriating a little bit, but more of context making. And I think for us it's also important because that kind of brings together people who would not meet otherwise. And for us, especially when it comes to projects that are community-based, is very important.
Yeah, and we very much we work very often outside of common white cube, and collaborate with people from different fields of expertise. And so for us, it's also interesting to to merge different knowledge and develop new knowledge together collectively with other colleagues and professionals, and also non-artist people and representatives of different communities, different gender, social groups, age groups, and so that's why our project often durational, and because for us it's important to continue working on the same subject, possibly with the same people. And I would like to talk maybe a little bit more about particular projects, about project called Critical Mass, which actually is the project which the longest within our practice. And TOK started in a way from this project, and it travels until now. So that's it started as in 2010 as TOK, as well as a platform for conducting research and developing knowledge on post-socialist conditions. And the project deals a lot with remnants of Soviet past in different social spheres, as well as with local and global implication caused by accelerated capitalism in the region. So within Critical Mass, we call it, in the beginning, we call it public art project, but actually like public is not explaining exactly the complexity of this project. And so within this, although it takes place in open location, public places and institutions, and it's kind of more as a research platform rather than just commissioning an art in public space. So more than 40 artists and art collective took part in this project, and like almost 40 new commissions were realized in open locations, educational institutions and public spaces in St. Petersburg over these years. So the project divides on series and seasons, as we call it, because every season has its own theme. And usually we work about 2-3 years on each season. And so now we're working on its fifth season. And I will share now my screen with you. How to do it, just a second.
Is it working?
Yeah, just a second. Yeah,
great.
So are you going to talk about the fifth season, or are you going to start from it?
Yeah, I just want to talk about the fifth season that is kind of what we're working on now, and is very much connected to the idea of housing and real estate, and the we're looking at the historical elements of this theme connected to the building itself, the distribution of housing, design of housing. Of course, we sort of comparing models, which was like mass housing construction in Soviet time and on the territory of countries that practicing social democracy, and also compare it with the American model of mortgage and capitalist model, and what kind of implication it has on our mind, body, psychological health, interpersonal relation, social structures, segregation of society, and different corrupted processes behind the housing and real estate. Focusing on researching the subject, we're placing our research in one particular area in St. Petersburg. It's south west of St. Petersburg, the area which is like massively developing and one of the fastest areas. that developing right now with different housing projects, but also at the same time has all types of social housing architecture of Soviet time, different periods. So yeah, so that's the season which we're working on now, but previously we worked on different subject and in different different territories. The first season was very much taking on the very general conditions back in 2010, and the working migrants program, problem, the consumerism, and total pollution by cars of city environment. We work with also very personal stories connected to also housing. So sort of this theme was in a way developed already previously, or started research on in previous season. So what you see now, it's the family that lost their wooden house and were forced to move into these block buildings, and how this family of different generations are going through those changes, and how stories from this wooden house, which was demolished because of housing programs, how it's became a personal history of the family, but also a national history. So the project had different layers. So the artist Gareth Kennedy involved different groups of different generations into actually research and looking at the idea of land, his story, family house, and this mass program that was implicated in all areas of Soviet Union and beyond. So that's, we also worked with public libraries and artists like Big van der Pol from the Netherlands. They build up different social platforms and different models of to express freedom of speech. We also looked at some locations in different in different areas in St. Petersburg, which are closed for public, but actually has very interesting and complex national history. So with the artwork, we try to open those locations available for publics. What you see now is a view from observatory, which used to be a public observatory, but closed now, but was open during the project. And we commissioned different types of works. For instance, we commissioned the rap songs and about subculture of outskirt areas of St. Petersburg, but also could be this subcultures could be very much related to different areas or ghetto areas in any mega cities in the world. We work with very particular buildings as well. This building is called Dacha Gromova. The building was built in the middle of 19th century and belonged to a like wealthy man. And after that, had very complex history during not only during imperial time, but also during Soviet time. And now it's in a situation of renovation, but we composed the whole project narrative around collective history and about history of a place, because this building was very important for many people that living around, and the building is located in the garden, which is also a very important public spot in Petrogradsky district, in one of the districts in St. Petersburg. So we organized around this case different activities and invited different people to also think about public space as their space that they can construct and have influence on. So this banner is also attempt to put together official history and private history, unofficial, when people were talking about their story in relation to this historical side. And we also use the park as a public platform for all kinds of activities, including culinary show, and with participation of local activists, artists, and philosophers. There is a performance in the park as well, which also had an attempt to hear voices of people that living around the area, and that have an emotional and historical relation to this park. We work also with with the subject of, so it's connected in a way to different strategies that government and educational institutions are using to form young citizens. So we decided to work with the network of youth clubs in St. Petersburg, and it's a big network of organization for young people from 10 till 26. So it's about 350 clubs only in St. Petersburg, but this is a national network. And those these clubs are part of this network was formed during early Soviet time, also as an institutions to control and educate young people living in urban areas. So we work with different types of clubs and work with people that go there, trying to present different formats, how you could work with young people to empower them socially and politically.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I will stop now, and yeah, so Masha will continue with.
No, maybe I think Ilaria has a question.
Oh, yeah, sure. No, it's fine. Because of how, like, I had prepared some other elements, but I think that you embraced them all regarding, since this notion of disciplinary isolation that you're trying to kind of fight, and also working on the long-term processes, which I think is very interesting and in nomadic ways. So I wanted to jump to a question that hasn't been addressed yet in terms of content, but I think it's important to give somewhat prominence because it sits also at the heart of one of the strategies that you are proactively developing, which is that of transnational operations, right? So what you just showed us, Anna, is an ongoing sort of project that has multiple articulations, work on also on projects that have this very strong national breadth, while also finding interesting ways of being rooted in a specific political, social, and cultural context. So I found interesting when I first learned about your project is that on the one hand, there's a form of regional research and thinking that focuses very much on the post-context, as you were saying, but also goes beyond it quite strongly in terms of the network that you create. So I would like to ask if you could tell us a little bit more also about how you're working in that sense along those lines, and to ensure or to kind of cultivate the ability that your projects have to be anchored in one context, but also strongly in conversation and in relation with a much broader spectrum of political issues that perhaps go even past, as you were mentioning, the post-it context in the first place.
Yeah, I think when we were just thinking about what the missions of TOK would be, we were discussing the connection of St. Petersburg through TOK and our project with the international artistic community. And for us, it was very important, I think, to bring very edgy curatorial and artistic practices to St. Petersburg, and also bring Russian context out there, because I think you know, it's not only me who thinks that, but I think global understanding, or maybe general understanding of contemporary Russian, not only artistic but also political processes, can be very black and white. And of course, for general public, it's very much dominated by certain media discourse that is being created. So we, I think, always saw our role as this, you know, independent cultural diplomats who also create a certain deeper, broader, and I think more multi-layered and multi-vocal narrative about what's happening in different parts of Russia, mostly in and around St. Petersburg, because this is the context that we know well and where we work a lot, and bring it to different locations and context and platforms, just to also present maybe a more multi-dimensional picture of what's happening. And one of our projects that kind of follows this trajectory is called States of Control. It's also an ongoing project that kind of revolves around the issues of media, information, disinformation, design of information, information manipulation. And it started, I think, also from a very specific political context and situation when, after the military conflict between Russia and Ukraine, when the media context in and around Russia started to drastically change. So this polarization that started to remind all of us the rhetorics of the Cold War again appeared in the media, and the same intonation in the media, in the Russian media, also started to increase. And this polarization and this kind of, breaking of certain channels of information, cultural channels, kind of stimulated our research about different media strategies in the Cold War and in 2014 and further on. And the first project that became kind of the first result of this research was an exhibition. I'm just trying to, you can't see my screen, right?
Not yet.
Not yet. Here. So the first project that was a part of this ongoing initiative was the exhibition that we showed in New York. It was a result of our residency at Flux Factory in New York. And I think it was a very good and interesting platform for researching the media tactics of the Cold War and how they were developing both in the US and in Russia, and how we see certain things, returning, but in a different kind of turn of a spiral. And that exhibition was very small. It was also accompanied by a series of so-called kitchen talks, as we call them, because Flux Factory had a communal kitchen. It's a very residency was a strong communal principle. So we had this kitchen talks that also reminded us about talks that people had in their kitchens in the 70s in the Soviet Union, when also the reality was very split in terms of what could be pronounced in a specific context and what could not be pronounced, what could be just supposed to be addressed to a very specific circle, and what words you could use outside of your home. So this series of kitchen talks was a reference to this very ambivalent reality of the 70s and the 80s in the Soviet Union. And later on, the project traveled to Helsinki. I'm just moving to another. When I jump from
Need to reshare.
Yeah, I need to stop sharing the screen and starting all over. So I'm just gonna do it again. I'm sorry. Which one is it? So the project for the came to Helsinki because Finland has always been on this, in this very difficult position of a country that's between the Soviet Union, Russia, and the US. It was like this during the Cold War, and when the annexation of Crimea happened and Russia became again this very dangerous neighbor, all the neighbors countries, including Norway and Finland and the Baltic states, were, I think, in this situation of horror, that again, their neighbor is very unpredictable and the aggression can time any time. So this political climate, in a way, was returning. So Helsinki was chosen as a place for well, no, it's not that one. Sorry, I'll just close all the ones that I'm not using at the moment. Yeah. So Helsinki was chosen as a place to show the continuation of the project, and there we also invited a few local artists who would show the this kind of political ambivalence of Finland and this kind of shaky position from the perspective of the 50s and of the time of the Cold War. Here. So just documentation of the exhibition. The exhibition took place at Augusta Gallery of Helsinki International Art Program here, and included a number of artists from Georgia, Israel, Lebanon, Russia, Sudan, Ukraine, Poland, and the USA, who in their work would address different aspects of information manipulation with historical facts, ideology, and the ways various countries build up their historical narrative, their contemporary political narrative, and what are maybe the artistic strategies that could contribute to creating an alternative either communication channel or narrative that would include silenced voices or hidden facts, underrepresented knowledge, difficult knowledge that we often don't want to face, and so on. So in this issue of the project, we also had a focus on Russian-Ukrainian conflict, and we had, for instance, artist Alevtina Kahidze to talk about occupation, and she presented the results of her workshop on occupation that she did in Ukraine with a group of young people. And another project that was also live was the play that we commissioned to Russian playwright Mikhail Kalushkin. And it was about freedom of speech and the internet, and how the internet is being used as a tool for manipulation, for creating conflicts, for juggling facts, and for creating an image of the enemy. Something that was also very actively constructed during the Cold War by both participants, the major participants of the Cold War. And of course, the project included much more players, because now we see that, you know, this duality that was present during the Cold War has changed into this multi-vocality and multi-playerness. So we have much more strong political and economic players that get engaged into this kind of relationship of conflict, relationship of power control. This project was shown two years after Trump election. So I think the US was still partially very much in shock because of all the transformations that had started to happen. And the project is continuing. We brought it back to the US, but this time to Minneapolis, to Weissman Museum, where we continued to work on this theme. So we spent some time in Minneapolis to also understand the local political conflicts and context. And since we were there in 2018, and already there was a lot of conversation going on about the upcoming elections 2020 that just happened, we thought that the third issue would be about the elections and the future of elections and the politics of choice and our voices and democracy. And this project was supposed to be taking place in real life, of course, but due to COVID, we had to put everything online. So on the election day, we had a series of presentations by a group of sociologists, artists, activists, journalists who would address the theme of elections from different perspectives, and also would address the contemporary political situation in the US, Russia, Turkey, Belarus. So it was maybe more of a politically rather than art-focused event, which I think also something very specific for our practice. So we don't put ourselves certain boundaries. We try to work with different areas of knowledge, and based on kind of different aspects of different areas of knowledge, generate some new information and some new discourse. So this video should be also available online soon on the website, but so far there is program and information about all the speakers and more about states of control, how it originated and how we hope it to develop. We still hope that we'll have a chance to maybe next year be in Minneapolis again and have a more of an offline program. I think that everyone is missing this format very much, and no online interactions can substitute this feeling of being with like-minded people in the same room, in the same environment.
So thank you, Maria, for this. Since we're reaching the end already, it's going very fast. I wanted to ask sort of a last couple of questions. First, I want to remind everybody what the website is of TOK so that they can find, for instance, additional information and so on. But as we were saying also in advance of the talk, what we always try to do is to gather all the links of projects and articles about you and so on and so forth on our Call for Curators talk page so that people will be able to, for instance, look at the website that you just showed us in screen share and so on. Now, with that being said, yes, I'm just going to save these last two questions to ask you. And in the meantime, I encourage everybody who's watching to start asking questions through the comment section. Something very interesting that came up in previous conversations, and you brought it up briefly so before, is, as you were saying, this relationship with the Western canon or the Western contemporary art scene and the Russian or post-Soviet context at large. And that struck me was that while we were preparing for this talk, you were elaborating on how there is a need to somewhat create a new language, also is able to speak of these realities, somewhat a new discourse for this relationship. And you really specifically used this word, which is invisibility. You spoke of the invisibility of the East, which for me was also very interesting. So thinking about that and thinking about some of your recent projects as well that speak of specific social political context, as also Anna was mentioning before. I'm thinking, for instance, about the Arctic Forum. I just wanted to ask you if you could tell us a little bit more about this invisibility, about certain elements of contemporary art and cultural discourse, for instance, that you're working, but that are made invisible by this Western canon, as you're saying, that is so dominant, so prominent. Just somewhat to yes, if you could address this element a little bit for us.
Yeah, I think this curatorial symposiums, which we developed already second year, is another structure, is another network that is really trying to bring into public spotlight different narratives, historical, political, and social, that are happening in the region. And it's very important for us also to develop different channels of knowledge exchange and information and institution of knowledge in order to understand that we are living in a very shared environment, especially when it comes to shared political history, but also into shared ecological past, present, and imaginary. So this year, the symposium took place in collaboration with our colleagues from Arctic Art Institute that live and work and raised and born in this region. So they're really native people from up north, high north, and Russia, in Russian Arctic, Russian part of Arctic Circle. And for several years, they've been working very hard in order to bring into international and also national public discourse different knowledge and conditions about Arctic, which is a very important region for planetary balance. So I will show just a second. I'll share a screen just to show you the image of this
symposium. I'm gonna share again.
Symposium, yeah.
I'm going to share your website still in the meantime for those who might want to look at some of these materials. And again, I encourage everyone to ask questions if they have questions for Anna and Maria, as we will soon reach the end.
Just very briefly, while Anna's sharing the screen, talk about the forum. So the forum is conducted for the 4th time, and they're covering not only the Russian North, but also the Norwegian North. And I think what's a very important part of this work is the exchange between high north of Norway and high north of Russia. And I think in the center of Norway and in the center of Russia, people know about their north much less than people on this kind of bordering territory. So this knowledge is, not known not only outside of Russia, but also within Russia. What's happening in the Russian north is also not very known by a lot of people. It's a territory that's remote, and its kind of narrative are I think, kind of out of the focus of the people in different parts of the country.
Yeah, for us, it was very important to build up a conversation about this economical and ecological vulnerability, taking high north and Arctic as an example, but also to sort of outline different processes that are happening globally and also in different territories that are very much exhausted and by the central territories of capitalism. So we talked about this notion of peripheries of global capitalism, but also we were thinking about towards like non-violent existence, and we rethought different geographical, political, and disciplinary and mental borders. And for us, it was also very important to think about political and ecological imaginaries, to make a step back and to dig into different suppressed ecological history and trauma.
Yeah.
And one of
the Arctic, right? Because I mean, we are so much dependent on what's going to happen to the Arctic, and the idea was also to explore different processes and history of colonization of the Arctic and how it has been done by different countries, including of course Russia, and what are the possible future developments and what are the future scenarios. And I think especially now when all these connections between people and countries are becoming again very vulnerable, it's very important also to kind of make a shift from this anthropocentric lens and look at processes that are happening from different perspective, from non-human perspective as well. And that was also part of our conversation with artists and researchers and politologists as a part of the symposium.
This is great. And I just want to just remark again, because for me, you shared a link previously and after it happened, and it was very important and interesting. It's also decided to be able to watch afterwards the talks. So again, on the page devoted to talk, you have the link also to this symposium, so that I really encourage everybody to go and watch the talks and the keynotes that took place during this 2-day event, which I think was very, very interesting. So just to wrap up, we have 4 minutes left. I want to take the right to ask the very last question. And I want to ask you something that what you discussed at the very beginning. Just a general wrap-up question about curatorship, but I think because of the way in which you both work together, it's very interesting to hear your thoughts and opinion on that. So in 2019, a year ago, you developed an exhibition project titled How to Work Together. And for me, it was very interesting to see that, because that is an ever urgent and relevant question. And so very simply, I just wanted to ask you, what is your answer to this question? Sort of your reflections after 10 years of activity together. What are your reflections on curatorial work, to its need to be responsive to shifting geopolitical and conditions, but also to be developed in communal ways, as you were saying before, through friendship and solidarity, and most importantly, in ways that gather people involved rather than separating or creating distinctions. So how do we work together? What is your thought on that through the lens of the curatorial work you've been developing together for the last 10 years?
I think it's very important to stay open to new knowledge, because sometimes we block it. We feel like, it's not relevant, it's not going to work. But through our practice and how to work together, this exhibition was basically a retrospective look at our practice. And when we put everything together, we saw how small are we in comparison to all this amount of people that we worked with. And I think that was a very striking moment for me, that we're just triggering certain moments, and we invite different people, but this is a very collective creation. Every project that we do is a result of collective work, where people bring their best, and in the end, it's beautiful to see these results that are like a patchwork, kind of have traces of everyone's input.
I think when we put our exhibition, retrospective exhibition, it was also, we were thinking also about changing political landscape in Russia, because when we started, everything was in a way possible. It was economically very fruitful time to actually start any kind of initiatives. And then after political shift and changing of which very much reflected on limiting possibilities of curatorial workers and academic workers in Russia. So in this, how to continue actually working together and continue to produce meaningful and new narratives and new knowledge in the situation of political change and suppression. So how to continue working together between each other, between us as a collective, with other colleagues of ours in Russia, but also beyond Russia, because some organizations are not able to support Russian cultural activities. For instance, there is a list of unwelcomed organizations. There is several very important institutions, like British Council, for instance, was forced to be closed in Russia. And there are several of that cultural institutions that represent different countries and worked with Russian art professionals. They're not longer there. But how to continue in this situation to work together still?
Thank you. Thank you so very much from both to both. I just share here again the website of your Curator Collective for those who want to have a look. Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and your time with us. I'm very glad that we had the chance to do this. And I want to share the link to the page of the talk so that people will find links and additional resources and information, including something that we didn't mention before, which is the description of the upcoming show, Voicing the Silence, that you were proposing to the ABEX Art International Open Call, and you're one of the very few winners, so congratulations for that. So I encourage everybody to have a look at our page and see all these links. And with that being said, I want to thank you again and thank everyone who's been watching this. Remind everyone that we will be back on Tuesday, December 1st, again at 6:30 p.m. Berlin time. And as always, we will announce our speakers in the coming days. So for those who want to stay up to date on this series, you can subscribe at the same page that you see here. And also one last thing, sharing again our email address. If you have questions for Maria or for Anna, we're very welcome to, very happy to act as a bridge. So feel free to connect with us by email to share ideas or even just feedback. So thank you again, everyone.
Thank you very much, Ilaria.
Thank you, Ilaria. Thank you so much.
Take care.